extremely supportive of the Filipino American community, and last year's conference, he reminded many of us that Filipinos actually became an integral part of the American workforce since the first settlement of the bayous of Louisiana in 1763. His eloquent speech and the proceedings of last year's program are in your program brochure. And if you think that it is so full of Philippine items, it must have been edited by a Filipino American. You are correct. The story of Senator Inouye's courage and integrity has long inspired many Americans, particularly those of us in the Asian Pacific American community. As an 18-year-old, he enlisted in March 1943 and served with great valor in Europe with the legendary 442nd Regimental Combat Team. He came home as a captain with the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest award for military valor, along with other medals and citations. After working his way through George Washington Law School, Senator Inouye went on to a distinguished public service career. Senator Inouye is a living example of the citizen, the soldier, the statesman, critical to the development of American democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the high honor and privilege of introducing an American hero, Senator Daniel K. Inouye.
My fellow Americans and ladies and gentlemen, although this gathering is one of Asian Pacific Americans to discuss our past, our present, and our future, I would prefer to look upon this gathering as a celebration of America, a celebration of the goodness of this nation. In my case, it began 100 years ago. It was early in the morning in the first week of June of 1899. A fire somehow began in the village of Yokoyama in the prefecture of Fukuoka. And the fire destroyed and demolished 3 residences. A few hours after that, the village council got together to determine the cause of the fire and to decide upon who would pay for this. And after a few hours of deliberation, the village council came out with its decision and said that the Inouye residence was the cause of the fire. It started there. And therefore called upon the Inouye clan to pay for all the repairs, if necessary, and that was it. Soon thereafter, the head of the clan called upon his son, the eldest son, Asakichi, and said that we have a crisis in the family, a crisis that involves the matter of honor. We have 3 choices. 2 are unspeakable. One would be to leave the village in the dark of the night and forever suffer the curse of shame. Our names would be crossed out of the village book, the Koseki Tohong. No one would marry our sons or our daughters. The other is to remain in this village and not pay the debt, but no one would talk to us. None of their daughters would marry our sons, and none of their sons would look upon our daughters. The third choice is the only one, and that is to pay whatever is necessary. It was calculated that at that time the repair costs would be slightly less than $300. But $300 100 years ago was an amount that was almost unattainable. So Asakichi was instructed to take his wife Moyo, and his eldest son, Hyotaro, and go to Fukuoka City because they were recruiters there from a strange place called Hawaii. These recruiters were looking for able-bodied men and women to work in their cane fields. And he said that as soon as the debt is paid, I will let you return to the village. So they began this journey, and in September of 1899, they landed in Honolulu and from there transferred to Port Island, the island of Kauai. And they signed a contract within the first hour of their arrival. Pictures were taken of them. And the amount was a substantial amount. Asakichi, my grandfather, received $15 for 60 hours a week, 1 month. $15 for a month's work, 60 hours a week. The contract called for 4 holidays: Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, and the Emperor's birthday. My grandmother received $10 a month for 60 hours a week, same terms. What deducted from both of them were $2.50 a month for transportation costs. They worked in the fields until 1924. The debt was paid at that time. Well, times have changed since then, but that beginning was the beginning of my journey. 25 years after the arrival of my grandparents, I was born in 1924. My mother was the daughter of immigrants who came to work in the fields. She was born in Hawaii, but a few things happened before my arrival. In 1922, the Supreme Court of the United States rendered a judgment and declared that Japanese were not qualified for citizenship. That was a rather strange decision where one ethnic group was singled out. Then in 1924, the Congress of the United States passed its first Immigrant Quota Act. And in that act, they had a provision that said, if you are unqualified for citizenship, then that nation cannot have a quota. So Japan was singled out as the one country without a quota. And there were many other laws, for example, along the West Coast, that said that only citizens may hold title to land. But it applied only to the Japanese. If you were an Italian and not a citizen, you can still buy land, or German, or anybody else, but not a Japanese. As a result, when my parents got married, my mother lost her citizenship because she married an alien who happened to come to Hawaii when he was 3 years old. Then came December the 7th, then all hell broke loose. Soon thereafter, a couple of months later, the White House issued an executive order authorizing the United States Army to construct 10 camps. They were euphemistically called internment camps, but in essence, the description is that of a concentration camp. 10 of them located all over the United States, in Montana, in Wyoming, in Arizona, and places like Arkansas. And in these camps, 120,000 Japanese, most of them American citizens, were herded off with whatever they can carry on themselves. So you can imagine all the property that had to be abandoned in places like California. Billions of dollars worth of property. had to be either sold. I had a friend of mine who had to sell his brand new Chevy for $100. It was either that or I abandoned the car. Then, about a month after the executive order, the Selective Service System issued a directive declaring that Japanese citizens or otherwise would be considered 4C. 4C is a frightening designation. 1A, as you know, is physically fit, mentally alert. 4F, something's wrong with you, physically or mentally. 4C, you are an enemy alien. So all of us, and many of you here, were declared to be enemy alien, which was the insult of all insults. So many thousands of us petitioned the government and the President of the United States, and a proclamation was issued saying that Americanism is a matter of mind and heart. It is not and never was a matter of race. And the formation of the 442nd was authorized. They were looking for 1,500 volunteers from Hawaii. Instead, over 8,000 volunteered, which represented about 85% of the eligible men. And the same thing happened in these camps. There were 10 camps, and to the surprise of American authorities, thousands volunteered. They were in prison, but they volunteered. Well, the rest is history. This unit, as the Secretary indicated, was the most decorated in the history of the Army. And furthermore, they were involved in a battle to rescue a battalion of Texans. Texans are huge men. They were rescued by small men. This battalion somehow got surrounded by German troops, numbering about a division, 20,000. They first sent a regiment of Texans, and they were pushed back. They sent another regiment of Texans, and they were pushed back. So we were in the vicinity, so they called upon the 442nd. The 442nd was already decimated to about half its size, but we were asked to do this job. And many of us knew that we were expendable. That's why we were called. But we looked upon this as the ultimate opportunity. And in 5 days, the rescue was successfully carried out. But it was costly. The casualty rate exceeded 800. Of that number, 300 were dead. The commanding general of the 36th Division, General Dahlquist, was not aware of the casualties. All he knew was that his men had to be rescued. Well, he was so grateful that he called upon our colonel, Colonel Pence, soon after the rescue was made known, and ordered him to assemble the men of the regiment so that he can personally thank them. So the next day, the regiment assembled in a field, an open farm, and the general was so angered that in the presence of other officers scolded our colonel. Told the colonel, I directed you to have the men assemble here. You have decided to disobey me and sent most of your troops on pass. Well, I can understand that, because when the troop commanders reported the adjutant's call and reported all present accounted for, the company I served in, E Company, was the largest, 42 officers and men. Our table of organization calls for 197 officers and men. 42 were standing there. And there was another company, K Company, with 10 men. And the company commander was a staff sergeant. So you can imagine the general's chagrin saying that you let all the men go on pass. The colonel looked at him and said, "That's the regiment. That's the cost for rescuing your Texans." And when he realized that this was all that was left over, he couldn't give his speech. He gave the colonel a plaque, which incidentally was lost and discovered about 20 years ago. But it's ironic in a sense, but it also demonstrates the greatness of this country. In 1953, the law was amended so that the Japanese were included as part of the quota. And my parents were able to get naturalized, together with many hundreds of Japanese throughout this land. Then the GI Bill made it possible for many of us to study at taxpayers' expense and get all the degrees that we would have been denied were it not for this opportunity. But then something else happened. The United States Army, about 20 years ago, commissioned a committee of historians, military historians, to select 10 most important events and battles that were somehow part of the United States Army history. One of the 10 happens to be the Battle of the Lost Battalion. We are now together with battles like Guadalcanal, the Battle of Saratoga. So we did pretty well. But we were paid the ultimate compliment. About a month ago, the President of the United States nominated a man from Kauai, General Eric Shinseki. He's the #1 Army man, the Chief of Staff of the United States Army. And then about 10 years ago, the Congress, the President, with an overwhelming vote, declared that the action taken by the executive order in 1942 was wrong. The establishment of the camps was wrong. The internment of these men and women in these camps was wrong. And they apologized. The President personally apologized, and each one got a $20,000 redress, which was just token. And today, there are members from these families that serve in the Congress of the United States. At one time, there were 6 of us. Therefore, I'd like to call this a celebration of America. Oftentimes, in gatherings of this nature, one would speak only of the hardships and the evil that may have been rendered upon us. But when you look at it, I can't think of any other country as powerful as the United States that had the courage to admit wrong and to apologize. You think about that. No other country has ever apologized for its past sins. The United States has done so. Just a few days ago, the House and the Senate met in conference, and we declared that what we did to Latin American Japanese was wrong also. And we have as part of the law an apology of this nation to those men and women who were wrongfully incarcerated to be used as prisoner of war exchange. So this country is a great country. Yes, it does wrong. We have to remain vigilant at all times because we do make mistakes. Democracies always make mistakes. You can't get away from that. But whenever the mistake is made known, this country is great. It apologizes. So here I am, proud to be an American. Thank you very much.
Combat Team and the Military Intelligence Service of the United States were composed of Japanese American enlisted men and mostly white officers. And whereas since the American Revolution and Congress has commissioned gold medals as its highest expression of national appreciation for distinguished achievements and contributions, and whereas those brave and gallant men received this honor, one of the highest in the land, in 2010. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, on behalf of all residents of Fairfax County, does hereby recognize with grateful appreciation and admiration the Fairfax County Congressional Gold Medal honorees and urges all residents to join in recognizing these men for their selfless acts of dedication and patriotism to their country. So moved.
Second.
Motion made by...
Sorry about that. Motion made by the chairman, seconded by Supervisor Cook. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm pleased we were able to do this recognition today. And I'm just honored that finally you've received the recognition that you've all very much deserved. And that was a extremely difficult time for our country. Back in World War II and before my time. But we need to recognize that and take advantage of learning from you those experiences so that we remember them. And it took a long time to get the congressional recognition that was certainly earned and well-deserved. And I'm just glad that we're able today to recognize your service from the county perspective. And thank you so much. And I hope that you will share your stories with us so that we can retain them in our history. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Is there
Cook.
additional discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Actually,
yes.
let me just also say thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity, especially to thank our Japanese American Congressional Medal winners. This is, a really significant opportunity, I think, for us to say thank you to you for your service to your country and our country.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
First we'll
vote,
all
and then we
those
turn
in
it over
favor
to
of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Madam Chairman, that motion carries, and I give you back the gavel.
All right,
Okay.
and we're happy to hear from you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to say a few words on behalf of the Japanese American soldiers of World War II who fought both in the European and the Pacific theater. We thank the members of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors and other government employees for taking this time and effort to leave a resolution thanking us for our service during World War II. The Congressional Gold Medal was awarded to us. Afterward, we were invited for a photo session and whatnot. And we thank the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for making the awarding of the Congressional Gold Medal to us a very memorable occasion that we will treasure for the rest of our lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your service to our country.
Okay.
We so much appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
If there's no, would you also like to say something?
Want to say something?
This is your opportunity.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then we can do it.
All right, let's do, we're going to have a photo. We're going to have a picture, and if everyone could please come forward here to the dais, this way. And I see that we have other folks who may be here for this recognition. And let's first take a picture with you, and then I'll ask if others could come down and join us as well. And Supervisor Cook is going to join me, and the rest of the board will do the scrunch.
Okay.
You know what, you probably could. Plan to.
Yes.
Are there more to get in the picture?
First. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, now everybody.
Here for this recognition, you're welcome to join us for another picture. Everyone who would like to participate.
The comment did not apply to everyone.